All right. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. I am so happy to be here. I'm losing my voice a little bit, not because I'm sick, but because I just got back from a Tony Robbins conference where I did way too much yelling. So I've lost my voice, but it was really, really amazing. Anyway, I'm super excited about today's podcast because this is my first mother and daughter podcast coming on to share. So welcome to Jessi and Peggy. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
So I thought what would be awesome is, we could kick off with why don't you guys just sort of tell us, each of you sort of introduce yourself a bit, and then Peggy will go into your story. And I would love that. And Jessi, you could even start with how you found me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, it's a really, really cool story. So Annie and I are mentored and coached by the same business coach. And there's a lot of people who are involved in that community. So I didn't know her personally, I didn't know her story, but our business coach had mentioned something about Annie and what she did. And it just really perked my ears because for so long, my mom had struggled with alcoholism, and listening to what our business coach had to say about her, I was really interested. And so that's when I looked you up and I started to kind of just stalk you and figure out what the heck it was that you did. And it was cool because as I started to read into your methodology and get your book and just listen to your podcast and learn about you and your approach to helping people who struggle with alcoholism, it resonated so much because I help women who struggle with binge emotional compulsive overeating, and I use very, very similar, the same science. We just use, we just focus on a different issue. And it excited me so much because all I've ever wanted to do is help and support my mom to find a solution. And we just continued to come up short. And in understanding the science, as I started to dive into the psychology of eating, it started to make sense, how these struggles were, similar. Addiction is addiction, regardless of what it is. And so anyways, I got really excited and I bought your book and I decided, you know what? I asked my mom, hey, would you be interested in doing this course? And she was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy it for her. And I bought the course and I said, here, mom, here's the login. And I kind of just left it at that because I wanted to, I just wanted to be a support and allow her to take her own time and whenever she decided. Eventually, Mom,
yes,
in, right?
That's so awesome.
I did. It took me a while. I was taking care of my mother at that time, and she was very sick with dementia. It's just it's just one of those things. But when Jessi bought me the course, I was busy with my mom, and I just remember her saying, "Oh, Mom, I bought you a book." And then the book came in the mail, and then I got the card, a little card from Annie with the bracelet. And I thought, oh, this is nice. And I just kind of set it aside because I had my own other things going on, which I thought was worse. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really do anything with it at first. And this was when my mom was getting worse and worse. And then I remember Jessi at one point, I don't even remember where we were, but she said, I bought you this course that goes along with it. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. And I didn't really think anything of it because, again, I was taking care of Mom and still drinking and caught up in my own problems, my own little world here. So then I don't remember exactly when. I think it was after Mom died finally. Was it, Jessi, when my mother passed away last June?
Yeah.
And I think maybe coming home for her funeral. I don't know. That's all kind of blurry. But then I got into it and she bought me the intensive, correct? Is that how that was? Yes. Okay.
If you got the bracelet and the card, I send those out for the intensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't know the words exactly what each program is, so forgive me there.
Oh, that's awesome.
So to be real honest, almost all my time was up, but you were graceful enough to help me, get back into it so the money wouldn't just have gone by the wayside. So then I dove in after Mom and after going home and settling the estate and just kind of coming back here. I really dove into it when I came back last October after the funeral and just all of that. So I really started on my journey about last September.
Oh, that's amazing. And I just have to say, Peggy, I do think we can feel energy even through a Zoom call or through the internet, but like your energy is just so light and fresh and just like peaceful and happy. I really, it's amazing. And so what I'd love to do is have you kind of walk us back sort of to the very beginning for you. I mean, when did you take your first drink? How old were you? What was the circumstances?
I was 7.
7. What was
And
going on?
I mean, but then I stopped for a whole 7 years. I mean, I remember.
Well, good job.
I grew up on a farm in an alcoholic environment. We were very, very poor. So I was the youngest of 5, and my mom and dad lived on a farm with his mom and dad and his brother. So my dad, my grandpa, and my uncle were all severe alcoholics. So from my first remembrance of anything, alcohol was a part of my life, a very strong, negative, violent part of my life. So that's all I really knew, Annie, was just that this is the way it was. I grew up with screaming, nights where I couldn't sleep, and I had to get up and go to school the next day just because it was more peaceful to be at school than to be in that environment. So starting at like even 3, 4, I remember alcohol. But I took my first drink at 7 when my sisters and I were out in the yard, and we must have run into their stash somewhere because it was all over the farm. You just had to look a little, I guess. And I remember feeling the buzz off of one. I only had one beer. I didn't even drink the whole thing at 7. I'm sure you wouldn't need to. But I remember feeling a buzz from it. And then I thought, okay, this is what the men feel like. This is what it's like. Okay. So is this, and I always wanted to be loved and accepted, which when you're in an alcoholic environment, it's not very loving because there's just too much drama all the time. So that was my first experience with it. And then no more until I got into high school. And then in high school, I became a weekend binge partier. We'd just go for it on Friday and Saturday, and then I'd be fine all through the week. And that's how my career started. And it was a career because it lasted me 40 some years.
And then so high school, then what happened after high school?
High school, everyone seemed to go their own ways. All my friends went their different avenues, and I didn't have a plan. I had no plan. I was like, now what am I going to do? So I just ended up getting a nothing job, just minimum wage job. And I just continued on my own road of just not having a plan for life. And that road took me just to what I was doing in high school, and I was partying. And now my drinking, probably in my 20s, was not just the weekend. It evolved into weeknights as well. And when you're on your own, you can go out whenever you want. Unfortunately,
you moved out of your house after high school?
I was on my own at 18. I left the farm, I think the day after I graduated. I packed up. And
that sounds like a very relatable story and very true for a lot of people who are in that environment. Just why would you stay when you can leave, right? And
so I didn't really have a plan, and I've just left. And then I just kind of continued on that road of just kind of like drifting through life, basically with no plan. But alcohol was always by my side.
And emotionally, what was your state like? Were you feeling pretty peaceful, or were you distressed a lot of the time? I mean, you seem so just happy and bubbly, and you really have a zest for life. Was that true then?
Oh, well, I mean, it's hard to think back 40 years. I maybe portrayed that with the viewing public, because nobody knew, well, until the end of my drinking career, or towards the last 2/3 of it, I probably had it what was somewhat under control. So nobody knew. I felt lonely. I think a person who has gone to alcohol is a very lonely person inside. And that's just kind of their answer to relieve the pain.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And so in your 20s, then obviously you have a daughter. So how did that all come about?
Okay, let me go through my 20s a little bit. I had two failed marriages. That first one included a lot of drugs and alcohol, unfortunately. And the second one, I married an alcoholic. And that was about all of my 20s. I stayed with somebody that it was a foolish thing, but I was chasing this dad dream. I look back and it's like, I just wanted the dad love, which I never had when I was growing up at home. So I hooked up with this guy, and he was a severe alcoholic. And I stayed with him all through, pretty much through my 20s or later 20s. And then I just went off on my own, and I had a really good job at this point. And I focused on my work, but now I had more money, so I could party even more. So I was going out all the time with my friends. Our jobs were great. We worked 8 to 4, and at 4:15 we were at the pub partying weekdays. You'd go to happy hour from 4 to by 6 o'clock. You were toast. You go home. Next day, get up, go to work, meet everybody. And that just became the vicious cycle.
Yeah, I can relate to that. That was very much my story as well.
Yeah, and one good thing did come out of that vicious cycle of that pub where I used to party. I met Jessi's dad there.
Oh, amazing.
I was at a wedding reception, and I was playing shuffleboard with the groom, and his wife came over and said, Cliff, we need to go on our honeymoon now. Can you quit playing shuffleboard with your best friend? So he looked over at Todd, Jessi's dad, who was watching us play shuffleboard, and said, I gotta leave. Can you please take over for me? And that was how Jessi came into the picture.
And look how you light up when you talk about him. That's amazing.
Well, Jessi is the light of my life.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
So that's what, that was my 20s. And then Todd and I got together, and we both partied. We were both partiers. And that was not a good scene for both of us, because we were fuel on fire. Our personalities I love him so much, and I support him and his new wife now, but we just weren't good for each other.
Yeah.
So then it continued on. It continues to get worse, though, actually.
And so tell us a little bit about that. Is there any moments in that, Jessi's young, especially like just before you guys separated or after that you just really felt like, okay, things need to change? And when did you start to think like, okay, I want to change this?
Oh, all the time. All the time to myself. But you don't go talk to everyone saying, man, I'm drinking too much. I really need to slow down here. Hey, what are you doing at 4? Let's go have a drink.
Right.
You hide your drinking because you're ashamed of it. And I was ashamed of my drinking my whole life. But it got me. It hooked me early. So
Yeah.
all my drinking career, I knew this wasn't good. I ignored it, though, because it seemed to give me what I was lacking.
Yep.
But that was such false hope, because the next day all your problems are there, everything's there. I tried AA, and I know it's helped millions. I know it has. It is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was, to me, very cliquish. You're either in or out of AA, as I found out, and I wasn't one that fit in their circle. It just didn't work for me, but I know it does work because I've seen it work.
Yeah.
So I thought after that, maybe I'm hopeless. Maybe I am one of those that's just going to be like my uncle. My dad finally quit drinking when I left the house, the last one to leave the house, and then he quits drinking. Thanks. But I thought maybe I'm going to be like my uncle, and maybe I'm just going to die from alcohol. And I kind of just accepted it, that this was just going to be what it is. And I kept going down that route. I ended up, when Jessi's dad and I split up, I actually ended up homeless. living on a corner. That's how bad it got. I'd go to work in the morning and I'd have my suitcase after work. And I didn't know where everyone would get in their cars and go home. I didn't even have a car. It was tough for a while. It was really tough, but I guess that's when I found that, I can do anything. When you get homeless, and I did lose Jessi in the battle. Your dad he told me that I'd abandoned you, Jess, but I didn't. And I had to fight to get you back, but I did. And I had to fight the courts to get my name off the record that I was an abandoning mother, because I would never let go of you. So through all of that, I was able to pick up those pieces. I met Andy from work, who I am with now 20 some years later.
Oh, there you go, lighting up again.
Fell in love with me the moment he saw me. So he was really the one to help Jessi and me survive all this. Let's see. Yeah, he took me in, and he, on the weekends when I could go to Denver and get Jessi, I just started my plan to work on clearing my name so you would never grow up thinking I abandoned you, because I didn't. But I got all that straight, but my drinking career just continued. I guess I kind of got to the point I was just defeated. I mean, and it's like, okay, now that I got Jessi back, I'm just going to carry on where I left off. And that was not good. My drinking got worse and worse and worse.
But I will say, Mom, like, despite all of the struggles and all of the challenges and like all of the heartache, I had such a good childhood.
Yes, I would say in most ways you did. But the one thing I can't quite forgive myself yet is the hurt I caused you. If I could take all of that back, I would, but I can't. And I have to live with it and forgive myself, because I would never, ever have hurt you.
So Peggy, I just want to chime in a bit, because like, you have to know that, like, oh man, you're 7.
I'm what?
And then you were 14, and you have been doing the best you can.
Yes.
With the things you have. That nothing changes the core of that. And I know a little bit about the impact Jessi's making in the world. Yes. And I can promise you one thing: she would not be changing the life she's changing without that hurt. That hurt is a gift. It is a gift.
It is a sorrowful, thankful gift. Yes.
Gift.
All of our hurts and pains create who we are to help build a better tomorrow. I truly believe in that, because if life was good, we would have no basis of comparison.
Absolutely. And now she is strong and has overcome her own things to go on and help women who are just desperate and in so much pain. And like, she couldn't do that if she didn't have the hurt. Like, this isn't you were an instrument, and it doesn't feel good to be an instrument of pain in somebody's life. But I can tell you, my mother was an instrument, and there were painful things, but like, I blame her for who I am today, and with all the love in my heart, because I'm so happy with who I am today.
Yes.
It's like, yes. Blame me the right way.
Yes. So. And everything in your life, I believe, happens on course as it is meant to. My course, however, wasn't for me to unfortunately be able to stop alcohol until this time in my life. And maybe had I done it sooner, I truly want to pass it forwards. And maybe if I'd been there sooner, I might not have been able to, but I cherish the gift now that I have. Every day is a journey. I'm not there. I'm on the road to being there.
Absolutely. None of us are
So
there. There's no there.
there is no there just because we're on a destination called life. So I'm very thankful for you, for your book, for your classes. It's been a life changer.
It's
It
so
really
beautiful.
has, Annie.
It's amazing.
Growing up, Mom, it was like, you are literally the strongest person I know. And
I wish I could be there to hold your hand.
despite the struggles, and despite, the, like, when I started to understand, when I started to get old enough to understand what was going on, it was like, I'm sure you felt the same way at, being at home, feeling like, well, why, like, they don't love me enough to stop drinking, and I felt that, like, doesn't she love me more than she loves alcohol? And, but I continued to feel your love despite the struggles. And so I want you to know that I always felt your love, even in my frustration, even in my pain, even in my questioning. And it was like, and this is the thing I think everybody needs to hear who is struggling, because, in the women that I work with that struggle, it's like the guilt and the shame is so heavy, but you can be an addict and you can be a wonderful mom, and like, you gave me a wonderful childhood, and it just hurt to, to see you hurting and to have all of these questions and all of these fears, like, is she going to be okay? Is she going to be okay?
Absolutely.
But I just want you to know that there can be both, and there can be the pain, and there can be the fear, and there can be the hurt, and there can also be the beauty and all of the memories that we had, and all of the, all of the great things that came out of my childhood. So I agree with Annie that without that hurt, without that pain, like, I wouldn't know the gift of, freedom. Like, I turned to food to cope and to manage and to numb out and to overcome that, and to just see that, hey, freedom is possible. Like, I wouldn't know all of this or have the compassion for those who struggle with these things that I once was like, just stop. And it's not like that, you have to be educated on how to do that. So I just want you to know, Mom, that I had despite the hurt, despite the pain and the fear that I dealt with, I always knew that you loved me, and I always knew that you believed in me. And so I think it's just important to say that both of those things can exist. And, for the people who are struggling and feel the guilt towards their, with their kids and with their family, and they're carrying the weight of that guilt, it's like, know that the addiction doesn't make you a bad person. It hurts people around you, but it doesn't make you a bad person. And it's like, you have to let go of that belief, because otherwise you're just drowning in the weight of all of the shame and the guilt, which just continues to fuel the cycles.
And had I known how many people, until I met Annie, I had no idea how bad alcoholism is in the world. I'm angered at how they're targeting young kids. They're setting us up. I have to take full responsibility for grabbing the bottle. However, it was put out there, it's marketed. I see it everywhere now that Annie's pointed it out to me. You literally can't get away from seeing it everywhere. And it's so sick that they want us to pick it up and become addicted.
And it's the number one ad spend. Nothing's spent more ads. Sometimes vehicles edit shit out, especially around the holidays, but mostly it's alcohol. That's where the most ad dollars are spent. They have psychologists and psychiatrists on staff at the ad agencies that create the ads. I've talked to people inside who have left because alcohol has then taken them down, and they've gotten free through this Naked Mind, and have told me that they would sit around and brainstorm how they could create more of an emotional connection and a point of need, and how they could specifically produce new things like Trulies to target women, or like, back in the day, wine what were they called? Wine coolers to target children. Like wine coolers weren't meant for adults. They were meant to lower the drinking age, to make it more palatable. And the first thing I drank was a wine cooler way before I was 21. And that's true for most of my friends. And there's intent there, right? But again, even there, we have to extend grace because they are also thinking this is just my job. I'm doing the best. They're not seeing the heartbreak of a 7-year-old in an alcoholic farmhouse, right? They're not experiencing that. And so we are just humans doing the best. So we can't get ourselves stuck in a place of blame, but we also need to, and especially for everybody who's listening, let yourselves off the hook. I mean, like really put down those weapons of blame and shame, because there's nothing that will keep you stuck faster. I have these studies on my desk because I've been really going deep into this aspect of it. And it's hidden in a lot of the literature, but it keeps coming up over and over that when we have a compassion-led and a grace-led process through this, and that means compassion for yourself when you go do the horrible thing, when you pick it back up, when you go make the mistakes, you shorten the time between where you are and where you want to be. And that is just so being definitively true. And the next thing I'll say about this is that, they've done studies with mice, right? And they have given mice alcohol. First of all, they just turn their noses up at it because instinctually they don't want to drink it because they realize it's poison. And even true for us, if we were given real ethanol, which is what is in alcohol, same stuff that goes in your gas tank, we turn our noses up at it. But we mix it with wine coolers and all this sugar and all this flavorings and then make it palatable. And then the mice had to be force fed it. But when mice are exposed to an addictive substance, especially if they're exposed, by the way, to an addictive substance while they're in a stressful situation, like I can imagine your childhood was, they 100% of the time get addicted. There's not exceptions. So this idea that we've created these people who get addicted and these people who drink normally and don't, which by the way, Peggy, has created the shame you felt in talking about you drinking too much, which by the way, kept you stuck, is like total BS and has got to go away because that is just not true. And what happens in the brain, and this is where people need to get this on the deepest level and forgive themselves, is that biochemically in the brain, when you are in pain or when you overconsume a substance that stimulates your pleasure centers in that way, your brain takes that substance and from a survival perspective, puts it above your other needs. So above your need for food, above your need, literally, I didn't eat a lot. I drank wine at night and then I drank coffee in the morning until I drank my wine at night. I was what they call drunkorexic. I weighed 20 pounds less than I do right now. I mean, it was crazy town, right? And it puts alcohol above your needs for this. So there, in these studies with mice, they would put the addicted substance and the mice would ignore their children. They would walk over things that burned blisters, electrocuted metal grates, burned blisters to get to this stuff. They would starve themselves and ignore the food to continue with the thing that is stimulating the brain like the addictive substance does. So this is a biochemical thing. This is nobody's fault. It is because you have blood and flesh and bones, and we are not mice. And so when we understand this, we can free ourselves, which is what you've so beautifully done for yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I think the shame is, if anyone listens to this, know you're not alone. Know that your next door neighbor, somebody you meet in the grocery store, walking down the street is hurting and they're going probably through something similar. So the more awareness we put out there and not make alcohol be shameful that we used to have a problem with it, I think it has to come of age. It's time.
Yep, it's time, and it's happening.
Overdue.
It is happening everywhere you look. There's a sober, curious, mindful drinking. People are talking about it. It needs to become a mainstream conversation. This needs to be a wellness conversation, not an addiction conversation. We need to take it out of this. Something's wrong with you. You're an alcoholic or you're not. We need to make this a
we were targeted to become alcoholics. I mean, all of us are. They're not going to make a profit unless we get addicted.
Absolutely.
I mean, one glass of wine, if everybody just went on that one glass of wine occasionally, none of the companies would be in business. They could not make their alcohol and sell it. And they've made a product that they know is going to hurt us. They know it's going to hurt our families. They know it's going to take us down. And
and it's normalized. Like, that's the thing.
It's normalized. Well, look at Christmas time now, all the wine and celebrating, and they don't show the fighting and, the aftermath.
Yeah.
That's what they need to show.
Yeah. And not only is it normalized, but it is literally, you have to justify when you don't do it.
Exactly. What's wrong with you? Aren't you feeling good? Oh, how come you're not drinking? Yes. How
It's
come you are?
expected. It's not just normalized, it's expected in our society. And that is a very potent, very, very dangerous combination.
And you have to search out for something you like to drink somewhere, that isn't alcohol. And that's not necessarily an easy task, because, when you're drinking alcohol, you're drinking one after the other,
Right.
mainly for the buzz, certainly not for the taste. Anyone says it tastes good, that's just BS. But we push through the taste just to get the buzz. I mean, it's like, I can't, if anyone would admit it, booze does not taste good.
Right.
But yeah, they've targeted us, and they've made such a lucrative business, and they've taken down so many families. And ours is not Jessi and mine, but my family I grew up in. There's so many alcoholics in it. And alcohol really captured our family.
And it's interesting because it's like, okay, well, that must just be genetic. It's almost like it's proven that it's just genetic, but scientists can't find like the specific gene that is just the alcohol gene, right? And so, but then if you look at these studies of mice, and, interestingly, if you don't force feed it to them, but you put mice in an area where they are fulfilled and connected and safe, and then offer them heroin-laced water, which is like, addictive on a level that alcohol, much quicker level. They don't do it. They don't go there. They try it and then they leave it alone. If you put the same mice in a scary, isolated place, they go for it, right? So then what does that create? Of course it creates generations. There's no other outcome, but then that perpetuates the myth that there's these certain people who have addictive personalities or addictive natures. And we're just asking the wrong question. We're asking, what's wrong with me? Not what's wrong with this fermented liquid in a glass that, as you point out, if you took out all the mixers, you could not actually ingest it you couldn't physically have a sip of pure alcohol without making like a face and your body rebelling.
No. And I'm just so thankful that Jessi found you when she found you. And you too have changed my life.
You did it.
What?
Absolutely.
You did it.
Well, I would not be where I am without you, Jess. And I would not be there without you, Annie.
Well, we helped, but we're so honored to help. It's amazing. And you did the hard work. You made the decisions when the rubber hits the road, when you're alone by yourself and you're feeling triggered or uncomfortable. It's just you and you. And I'm really amazed and proud of you. It's incredible.
Well, thank you. Like I said, every day is a journey. And you can't look at it, am I there yet? Because You're never there. You're just traveling through life. And you got to do the best you can every day with the tools you have. I know that part of my prefrontal cortex probably got screwed up pretty darn good at an early age, my decision-making center. Because, it robs you of those cells, that make the proper decisions for you, does it not? Does that help you to make the right decisions?
Alcohol damages your prefrontal cortex not only while you're drinking, so it impairs your decision-making ability in the moment, but also over the long term. Exactly. And it can heal, and meditation is one of the best ways to heal it. That actually builds that part of the brain. So let me ask you, what was it? What were the things, the big ahas that were like, oh my God, this is possible? I mean, was it really just letting go of the guilt and finding that you're not alone, or?
Okay, let me think about that one for a second. Where was my aha moment?
I remember, Mom, when you dove in and you were like at your wit's end when you started and you dove in. And I remember you telling me like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like all of the things that she was teaching in the course. Like, I can't believe that, you know, that maybe I'm not, I remember you telling me this, I can't believe that maybe I'm not actually an alcoholic. Like, remember you told me, like, she said that there's, I think the same thing that she just said, that there's no, you know, there's no gene that proves that I'm an alcoholic and somebody is different. And you're like, maybe I'm actually not an alcoholic, but I'm just drinking a lot. Remember when you said that to me?
Yeah. And I think when you get labeled, when society labels you, or I should say, when one allows society to label you, we all have power to let it label us or not. But when we allow society to label us as something, as, you know, an alcoholic, a heroin addict, but, you know, there's not a heroin-aholic or however they say it. When we allow society to, when we take on those labels, that again is defeating. We're allowing defeat.
Mm-hmm. And it's so fascinating because that label specifically, it is okay. They've done so many studies where if someone will not start something they don't think they can be successful at, no matter what it is, if they don't believe they can achieve success, if they don't believe they can change, they won't begin. I was on the plane yesterday next to a gentleman and he asked what we did. And I told him, he's like, oh yeah, you know, I have somebody, he started telling me a friend about an alcoholic, and the first words out of his mouth, and he's like, I know it's a disease and it will never change. And I was like, well, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But anyway, that idea, when you say, I am this, and it is a disease and it will never change, and it will be a battle for the rest of my life, that becomes true. And so if you don't believe you can change it, it will always keep you stuck. It's learned helplessness because you don't think that there is an alternative, or you don't think that there's an option.
Yeah, the word alcoholic has to go away because it's self-defeating. It serves no purpose to anything in our society other than labeling people as this group, those people over there, you know, that we're so different than everyone else, and we're no different. We took a substance not knowing its true intent for us, that they want us to get addicted to it. That's the makers of this alcohol. They're not making it just so we can have a good time. They're making it to make a profit, and a big one. And the more people they get addicted, the more money they're going to make. And if we can unlabel alcoholic and get that thought process out of everyone's head, to give everyone out there the power that you're not an alcoholic. You aren't if you believe you're not. And all you have to do is take that label and throw it away. Just throw that label away from everything and start fresh from there.
And some people are very driven by the
no longer have it run my life.
Absolutely. Good for you. That's amazing. Some people are very driven by the label for themselves, because that was the point of change, was saying, okay, it was a fear-based change. Like, if I'm this, then I can never again drink in safety. That's what I've had many people who say, I am an alcoholic, self-proclaimed, will tell me. And they say, that's why I love this label, is because I know if I am this, then I can never again drink. And that's the only thing that's keeping me from that. And I feel like if that's where you need to live,
right,
that's fine. But the damage that's done to the rest of society is very intense. And even there, I have not ever energetically had anybody tell me and use that word and not felt their energy dip, ever. and not also some sort of shame. And people try really to just own it and be proud, but like I've never felt that it, like, for a human being, because the words
you know, no, I don't get that.
define you, right? They define you. And if you've defined yourself as broken, which is in essence what it is, and yeah, that's beautiful. That's huge. So let me ask you, I have one question for Jessi, and then I want to ask my final question for Peggy. So Jessi, your work, I know about it already, and it's so important and valuable to people. And I'd love for you to just like really briefly tell a little bit about your story and how people can find you, because I think that where this has all brought you is literally changing the world. And I know a lot of listeners may struggle with this as well.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, when I was, watching mom struggle with alcohol, I made a commitment. It was just like, it became something I was so afraid of. And so I didn't turn to alcohol. I thought alcohol was the devil. I didn't want anything to do with it. There would be parties I was invited to in high school. I never wanted to drink. I was so afraid of it. But I turned to food, and food became this thing that I would just numb out on. I would mentally check out, and I didn't even know what was happening. It just gave me relief. When I was a perfectionist, I felt like I always had to do things perfectly. It gave me this sense of relief. And so I just turned to it. And then obviously my body started changing, and I started getting insecure. So I tried to restrict, and I just got caught up in the cycles of binge, emotional, compulsive overeating, restricting, and over exercising. And the cycles just intensified and intensified and intensified over the years. And I remember just also feeling like I was drowning in shame and fear, and like, what the heck is wrong with me? Like, I would look at, addiction that I saw elsewhere, alcoholism, drugs, and I'm in here feeling like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I just feel normal with food? Why am I feeling all this anxiety and then sneaking it? And then it just felt so shameful. And anyways, that was a 10-year journey for me. And eventually I found my way out of it. And a lot of the ways that I got out of it is very similar science that you teach. It was like all clicking, and it was all making sense. And it was like, oh my gosh, like this. And so the science that you share with your students, your clients, your listeners, like, this works. And it's not just for alcoholism. And so when I finally conquered this struggle myself, I went to the Institute for the Psychology of Eating, because I felt like I had to do something to help the women who are suffering in silence, in this shame. Like, it's like, why can't I eat normal? And so anyways, I went through that, and then I started doing online coaching, helping women who struggle with this. And there is so much correlation. A lot of the women who, struggle with food will tell me, before this, I was a drug addict, or I was an alcoholic, and then I turned to food, and now I'm sucked into this food thing. And so, I see a lot of correlation, but just teaching them the science that, just like you do, is so empowering. And so these women are finding freedom. So I have a course, it's called the Food Freedom Masterclass, and it's an online based course, and set up very similar. We have Zoom calls, we just teach them the information, we show them the science, and it's so empowering. And I saw it happen for my mom, and just the way she became empowered going through your course. And it's so cool, because the same thing, watching these women who struggle with food, it's the same thing, the sense of empowerment. And the industry, just like alcoholism, the diet industry is set up to cause us to fail and get in these cycles. So we keep coming back for the next diet, the next diet, the next diet. And those cycles just continue to perpetuate. And when it comes to, healing those struggles with food and body, there's a little bit of a difference, because obviously we need this substance to survive, and it's a beautiful thing. So it's kind of like a backdoor approach, very similar science, but we have to shift our relationship with this thing that we need. But so it's been a really cool journey. And it was just so, like, my heart was so filled when I heard Russell talk about you, and it was like, oh my gosh, somebody is this is the science, somebody is using this for alcoholism. And I felt like God literally, like, just came down from heaven and was like, here's a solution for your mom. So
beautiful. It gives me chills. And where can people find you?
So I have a podcast. I always like to direct people there, because I feel like that's the best place I express my heart. The name of the podcast is the Dear Body Podcast. And then I'm on Instagram, just at Jessi Jean.
And I would say follow Jessi Jean on Instagram, especially if you're a woman. Jessi, you post such beautiful things, because what you do is you visually deconstruct how it is, like all the filter and the model BS. So Jessi will like pose normally, and then she'll like convert her body to look like a model picture, and your body is beautiful both ways, but it's so different, and you just feel it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having all these images put into my head, but the woman who's taking that picture had to move her body in a way that was so unnatural to get that image, that's not real beauty. And like, you just do that. And we all know that about the airbrushing thing that came out, and I was like, oh my God, everything's airbrushed. And that was so empowering for us. But what you're doing with, like, because social media is now where we're getting more of these images than marketing. And I love that. So it's JESSIJEAN. So at Jessi Jean.
And Jessi Jean with one N was taken. So 3 N's, but yeah. That's
N, but I'm sure. Okay. So yes, that's awesome. We'll put the link in the show notes as well. That's so amazing. So Peggy,
Yes.
my last question for you. And thank you guys. This has been like phenomenal. This has probably been the most like heartfelt and emotional podcast I have been on, because so rarely do you get two perspectives. Oh, okay. I have to ask this last question to both of you, actually. So Jessi, I'm going to ask Peggy first, and then I'm going to ask you. Peggy, I would love to know, what would you go back and tell the person who had lost her daughter, or the person who was still struggling with it when her daughter was at home and had all the shame and the guilt? What would you tell her about life, what life is like for you now?
It's bliss. It's true bliss. I wake up every day free in my mind, free in my heart. Hey, I don't have a hangover. That's the best part. You can get up early and face the day. I want to tell everyone there's hope. There's hope out there for you, and you're not alone. You are so not alone in this struggle. And I encourage you, anyone out there, to reach out to Annie or to reach out to Jessi, because both of these women can help you so very much. And it's sincere. They want to help you because they understand. They've both been in both sides of this spectrum. But I guess freedom to be able to look at myself in the mirror and not be ashamed of who I am and the lifestyle I'm living today, and say I overcame, is huge, because as far as I know, I'm at least 3rd generation of that word, and maybe more. I don't know, because after that they were in Finland and Sweden, but my guess is it was going on pretty good over there too. But I'm finally free, and I wish I could direct many more family members, because there's so many in our family that struggle with alcohol. So who's ever listening out there, there is hope. If I can do it, you can do it.
Oh,
and I just want to thank Annie and Jessi so very much.
Love you.
That was amazing. So Jessi, I would love to hear, like, from your perspective, like, having your mom who you wanted so desperately to help and felt powerless to help her, and then now seeing this beautiful, radiant, joyful, blissful woman. What is it like for you?
Oh man, it's so good. So good.
Wow.
It is, like Mom said, it's bliss. I feel like I always knew that there was this woman inside of you, but it just, to be able to experience it and to have memories and it not be covered in this thing is just, it's so rich. I feel such a deep connection with you, Mom. I feel like we can laugh and we can have fun and we don't fight like we used to. And it is so fulfilling. I no longer worry. I no longer stress. I no longer wonder if you're going to be okay, because I know you are okay. And you know, it's just so amazing to get to spend time with you and my stepdad, Andy, and just, I know that the whole family, I know we all feel it. Like, we all feel just your presence, your richness, and your life, and how bubbly and alive and joyful you are. And I think it's given me like I never was, I wouldn't give up on you. I just wouldn't. I could not give up on you because I loved you so much. And I just like, I want other family members to just don't give up. Like, don't give up on your loved ones.
So beautiful. Oh.
And can I just say one thing?
Of course.
Jessi, I love you more than life itself. And as of today, I'm going to throw away my shame and guilt. And today's a new day. And you and I are just going to walk hand in hand through this life, knowing that this is a journey. We've done that part of our journey. Now let's start the next chapter and see what that has in store for us.
Amen.
Okay, dear, I love you so much.
That's Peggy, that's what people don't get. They don't get the beating yourself up. It feels like you're doing the right thing because it feels like, oh, I need to because I did this person wrong, but they don't get that it is a barrier right between the two of you.
Yeah.
It's keeping you apart. Your lack of forgiveness for yourself is keeping you apart. For you to see that and make that declaration was just really touching and beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh,
It is heartfelt because that little girl there, she's everything to me. But today's a new day, a new dawning, and here we go. We just start afresh today, Jessi, Jean.
Yeah, that's right, Mom.
I love you, dear.
Beautiful.
And Andy, my life has changed so much because of you, and our family dynamics have changed. And may God bless you and your family richly.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being here. I know this is millions of people listen to this podcast unbelievably, but they do.
Well, to all of you out there, there is hope.
It's beautiful. All right, you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Love you both so much. I cannot wait to see you, Jessi, in January at the conference. And Peggy, have a wonderful day.
Okay, you too, Annie. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, are you looking to connect with like-minded people? Sometimes maybe you feel like, as someone who knows all this information from the Naked Mind or the alcohol experiment, that you're living in a world of muggles and people just don't speak your language. That is why I created The Exchange. The Exchange is an online community where we meet face-to-face, live video calls multiple times a week with people from all over the globe just to connect, to have somewhere you are seen and you're heard and you feel less alone, and really that you can give back and get the support you need. So if this sounds great to you, check it out at thisnakedmind.com/exchange. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.